This podcast is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to help expand our programming, head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and become a TSW patron. You'll receive exclusive podcasts, access to a VIP Facebook group, monthly prize draws, Facebook Live sessions, and much, much more. Head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and become a TSW patron today, and the Force will be with you always. This is Talk Star Wars, the official podcast of talkstarwars.co.uk. Hello everyone, welcome back to Talk Star Wars. I'm Mark.
And I'm Paul.
And it's just the two of us this week. Episode 99 is going to be our Last Jedi reaction, just us. Next week on episode 100, you'll get Stephen and Rob's points of view. Stephen, I think he's watching it tonight, isn't he? Paul, he's about now, I think.
Probably there now. I think he may well even be in the first act.
Yeah, I know Rob's seen it and he's keen to talk about it, but he's tied up with visiting relatives, I think, at the moment, so he couldn't jump on tonight.
Oh, he might jump on?
No, he couldn't because he's tied up with some visiting relatives. But he will get his thoughts over to us next week on episode 100, and then we can really take this film apart. But tonight I think it's going to be quite interesting, just you and I discussing it, and we've got some listener input as well, some voicemails from listeners who are fortunate enough to have seen it already. This goes out on Monday, so I'm hoping that our North American friends would have seen it by now. But what we'll do is we're going to have a spoiler-free conversation after the thank you section and a couple of review type things, and then we're going to get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, you might want to bookmark this episode and come back later. We probably won't we've got some show notes, some news on the show notes, but we probably won't get to it tonight. I think this is all going to be Last Jedi shaped. So without further ado, should we just leap into it, Paul?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get to our thank yous. And we want to thank Alex Perez and Sean Snyder for subscribing to YouTube this week. Also, there's been some more subscribers there, but I can't see their details because they keep that part of their account private. So if you have subscribed over the last week or so, thank you very much for the support. And thank you also to Mark S., who is a regular email. I think we got something from him later. For sharing some images that relate to The Last Jedi. And I won't go into details about what they are, but there are some amazing items in there that are certainly spoilerific. That was obviously ahead of the film's release. So thank you for that, Mark. They were very interesting. On YouTube, we just mentioned the audience has grown a little bit, but we wanted to say thank you to Aunt Vasuvi for the comment she put into the YouTube channel on the bottom of one of the videos from last week. She says, woohoo, by this time on Thursday I'll be preparing to make the hike to the cinema for the premiere event. Thanks for another solid show, Mark, Stephen, Rob and Paul. Vasuvi had her question read out to the cast of The Last Jedi on the Star Wars show. Did you see that, Paul?
No.
Yeah, the Star Wars show had asked people for questions to throw at the cast of the movie.
What was the question?
The question was, I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember the exact wording, but it was
No
something
worries.
like, what was your favourite item on craft services during the production? So it was a great creative question. Of course they can answer. They can't answer much about the film, but they had a lot of fun with that. Adam Driver's answer had something to do with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
It's important, mate.
But it was great because I first saw it early hours of Sunday morning when I was watching the red carpet event, or the white carpet event as it was, from LA, the premiere of The Last Jedi. And when I saw Vasuvi's name pop up, I thought, she's part of our community. That's amazing.
Big congrats on getting the exposure on that
It's
one. That's
fantastic, awesome. Yeah. So I was really excited. So I sent her a message straight away and said, I'm really excited
Good
to see.
for you, Auntie V.
Yeah, well done. That was awesome. So yeah, thank you to Vasuvi for the comments, the continued support over on YouTube. And Autobahn Kenobi as well, our friend who had that questionable previous name. He says,
becoming a YouTube regular on the comments section.
Indeed, yeah, I really like it. I'm enjoying this stuff over on YouTube. I'm enjoying the way that conversation is growing because we got it well and truly established now over on Facebook in the VIP community, but not everybody has access to that conversation. It's nice that it's starting to grow over here now. But Autobahn Kenobi says, "Hi guys, going crazy not being on social media this week, but I figured I would be safe to listen to you." Of course, because we give plenty of spoiler warnings.
We don't do anything like that, do we?
No, he says, "Great show. I was 11 years old when The Empire Strikes Back came out in 1980, and my family lived in an apartment directly behind the cinema. I could see the marquee from my front door. I saw that movie 13 times projected before its theatrical run ended." That's amazing. "And God knows how many times since then. How I missed that bad effect on the Imperial Walker, I'll never know." Do you remember we spoke about that last week?
Yeah.
The little rod come up and push the leg up. I thought I knew every frame of that movie. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think we can always find something new in these films. And the reason we don't often is because we're so familiar with it. I don't know how much attention we pay as we watch them.
You'll subconsciously allow things to fly over, quite literally.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's true. I think we do. You sort of check out.
It happens
sometimes.
less when you dislike a movie, by the way.
What?
The more you like a subject matter, you subconsciously allow things to pass. That's the thing. The more you dislike something, if you're going to be looking for that kind of information, if you're not so into the situation, you'll actually pick up more information. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, well,
some internal bias, I'm imagining.
Yeah. We all missed this little rod on the foot thing, didn't we? I don't think any of us had picked up on that previously, and any of the people on the show. So
the only thing I've seen like that has always bugged me since, it's a different situation, but in Raiders, you clearly see the ram in Raiders push the van over.
Yeah.
You do clearly see it, sort of thing.
Now, see, that would be one of those things where you could be forgiven for going back to that film and tidying some of that stuff up. You know, it doesn't have to be Star Wars Special Edition levels of reimagining those scenes, and it doesn't have to be the way Spielberg felt he needed to censor himself for the 20th anniversary of E.T. You can do something else, right? You can go in and take away some of these things. There's a Jaws sequel, and I know not all the Jaws sequels are very good. I think it's The Revenge, and there's a wide shot of the shark, and you can see the trolley it's on underwater. It's absolutely horrendous.
Like Superman 5 didn't have lots of blue screen errors and all sorts going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
You can see the table holding Christopher Reeve up and all sorts of weird stuff.
No, was that Superman 4, isn't it? That
was
one?
It 4?
Yeah.
It was the one with Nuclear Man or whatever it was called.
Yeah. that was done on a shoestring, that one, wasn't it?
Literally about £8 or $8, should I say?
Thereabouts. All right. Well, so thank you to Vesuvian, thank you Autobahn Kenobi for the comments over on YouTube this week. Just a quick reminder about reviews. We will read whatever you write. We call it our Ron Burgundy guarantee. If you give us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts, we will write whatever you write. We will read whatever you write in there. So if you want to have a bit of fun with us, that's the place to do it. But equally, if you want to promote something like your own blog or a podcast, get some exposure through us. That's awesome. Head over there. I checked today and I didn't see anything, but Rob's usually pretty good at emailing me when we get the new reviews come through. So now this would traditionally be our listener comms section, and we do have some listener comms, but they all relate to The Last Jedi. So we're going to get straight into our reaction to The Last Jedi. But just a quick reminder that if you did want to send in email or voicemail to us, you can email us at talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com, or you can contact us through Facebook or Twitter as well. But if you attach an MP3 to an email, we'll use it in the show as a voicemail, which you're about to hear plenty of those. Yes, so that's talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. But right now, let's get into talking about our reactions to Star Wars The Last Jedi.
When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special.
Right, Paul.
Yes.
You and I were in the same place at the same time last night.
Yes, indeed.
But we didn't see the film together.
There at all, by the way. It was literally just us two. The entire VIP spread and everybody else we know. Was there anyone else there? Undiscovered?
No, they were in. They were kind of local in other theatres. I know Jeremy had a terrible experience at his screening. They started the movie early.
thing confused some allegedly confused some businessmen, shall we say?
Yeah, he missed about 15 or 20 minutes, didn't he?
Givable, seriously. And I'm not waxing lyrical there. That's seriously bang out of order.
Yeah, we did everything at my place to avoid that. So the film actually went on more like 9:30, more like midnight 30, because we were very conscious of the fact that people could seriously get into bother if they strolled up thinking there were going to be a bunch of trailers, and they wanted to avoid that.
Is that why you trying to sell me so much stuff?
Yeah, that's why I was trying to party with your hard-earned cash.
I want to go to about 11 colleges for some reason this week.
Yeah, yeah. But there you go. That's some of the other local substandard theatres, but I think we did a pretty good job, and we had a lot of people that left looking quite happy. And you were chief among them, so you really...
Mark, was the amount of people that were coming in as I was going out.
Yeah, for the 3 a.m.
Insane numbers.
I know.
It was like being a salmon, seriously, trying to get out. It was, I know how a salmon feels,
yeah,
seriously.
There was a lot, and it's because it's IMAX, isn't it? It's because they're coming in to see an IMAX presentation. They're getting, it's opening day of a Star Wars movie in IMAX, and of course people move heaven and earth for that.
Very pleasant, for want of a better word, sort of low hum in there last night. And no, it wasn't rowdy. By the time I got there were a lot of people. It was a really lovely vibe. Everybody being obviously Star Wars geeks, were all bumping into each other. Oh, I'm sorry. No, my fault. Everyone was really pleasant and polite and so on. But it wasn't rowdy at all. But there was this really cool low humming vibe about the place that everyone was really, really, really excited, but also we're all it is midnight, we're all a bit contained. It was very British, you might say.
Yeah.
But it was really pleasant, seriously.
It was a really nice atmosphere, wasn't it?
It was great. Really, really good. So I dread to think what it was like at 3 o'clock, because I was leaving and it felt like there were even more people there. Yeah,
there was a lot of people around, but there was significantly fewer screenings at that time, but there were a lot of people in there, some people in costume. And it just went out a hitch. Everyone really enjoyed themselves, and I didn't see there was nobody seemed to be leaving disappointed. There was nobody under a cloud. There's a lot of that online today, but there nobody left. No one complained on their way out about the content of the movie at all. And I was quite surprised when you and I met, because this is kind of like a replay from The Force Awakens, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, for us, yes.
You came out...
we have like a Romeo and Juliet balcony situation going on, don't we?
Yeah, we do. So you came up to me after TFA, and you were very cryptic, and it turned out that you wasn't such a huge fan.
I wasn't such a huge fan, no.
Of that movie. But this was very different, wasn't it? Your reaction to The Last Jedi.
Yeah, and I didn't know you'd seen it.
No, you didn't, and I had.
That was funny.
I had mentioned it in the group a couple of times that I'd seen it, and it was on the daily podcast that I'd seen the movie, but I haven't really been out on social media sort of saying I've seen it, because I don't want to bait people, and I don't want to accidentally slip up and say something and spoil the movie. So I've been very
chomping at the bit.
Well, this conversation is going to be the first time I've had really to have an in-depth conversation with somebody that's seen the film, that's as invested as I am, because the people I've spoken to about it that I work with who have seen it are kind of take it or leave it, really. But I know, obviously, you and I, there'll be a meeting of minds over some of this stuff, but it will be interesting to see what we differ on, because the tables are turned this year. With TFA, I was in from the start. I fell in love immediately, and you not so much.
I was an opposite magnet, I'm afraid.
And this is the other way around.
Completely.
This time. So
more than 180 degrees. It's a very strange situation. Yeah.
Spoiler free, what did you think of The Last Jedi?
It was the most fun I'd had in the cinema for a while. In the cinema. I mean, I've seen a few films that have blown me away, obviously, at home and so on and so forth. But it's the most fun I've had watching a Star Wars film since Empire.
Wow.
By a country mile and more. Seriously. I was riveted. It was human. That was a big thing for me. It was daring. It was original. It was beautiful. And some people don't like the humour. I thought some of the humorous bits were actually quite clever. It was quite funny. There were some silly bits. But at the same time, I don't discount the fact that it's still Star Wars. So you're going to get some silly bits. It's still a movie. It's a movie in space. And none of it's real anyway. So you're going to get some silly bits and so on.
Yeah.
But I was beyond satisfied and more by the time I left that theatre. I was grinning. It was great. I've been quite sick. I've slept about 3 hours in the last 12 weeks. I've not been funny. I'd been coughing and coughing and coughing for days, so on. Before I left, my wife was like, have you slept tonight? I was like, no, I haven't had a wink. She's like, you really shouldn't go. You really shouldn't go. I was like, no, this one I've got to do. I've got to do this one. I've got to do. And it's the first time in about 3 days that I was in a situation, everything was forgotten. Everything was just flowed off. And I just sat there like a Cheshire cat, and I totally loved the film completely.
It does kind of grab you from the first frame, doesn't it? Which I think perhaps we should do a bit of a breakdown. Yeah, I mean, the Crawl.
I even read the Crawl.
The Crawl wasn't that's supposed to have leaked before, but obviously
it was a bit nondescript, actually.
Yeah, it wasn't that one. Did you see the film in 3D?
Yes.
The 3D effect of a Star Wars opening crawl is spectacular, isn't it? The way it looks.
It was kind of cool, actually, especially when the letters appeared.
Yeah.
Because I didn't do that last time. And it was, I didn't put my hands out to grab it sort of thing, but the depth was really, really nice. Yes.
Yeah, really, really does give an extra layer to it. It's pretty spectacular.
And then as soon as the end of the crawl disappears, you're like, well, we know Ryan told us this was going to happen and there was going to be this continuum. What are you going to do next, sort of thing? And then obviously, it started. But I don't know. I just sat there beyond satisfied for 2.5 hours, was it? 2 hours or so?
Yeah, it's 2.5 hours thereabouts. Yeah. For me, I've said this a couple of times this week to different people. I kind of set part of my mind in monitor mode so I can assess myself as I'm watching these films and see how much fun I'm having. So, I'm sitting there laughing out loud and I'm on the edge of my seat, with The Force Awakens at the end. I was literally on the edge of my seat. I shuffled forward because I was so tense. And in this movie, I was the opening of it, I was gripped straight away. And we get thrown in. We'll get to spoilers in just a moment because I think that's the only way you can talk about this film. But we're thrown straight into the action and I was away. I was away with it. And I was thinking, this is fantastic. I thought the action was incredible. There was plenty of humour, really well written humour in there. And it wasn't until, I guess, sort of about 20 minutes into the film, maybe 15 or 20 minutes into the film, that I had my first oh dear moment. And it was just a little bit of what I perceived to be misjudged humour. And I thought, oh no, I hope we don't get too much more of that. And we got a couple of more bits, and then we got a character that I didn't like, and then we got a couple of answers to questions from the previous film that I thought, we'll put them into context when we get into talking about it in spoilers. And I was thinking, I don't really know if I like where this is going. But I came out at the end of it 90% in love with the film, 10% questioning some of the choices that have been made. And I didn't really have the problem.
Well, that's inevitable, though, mate. Even on what you might consider a perfect film, you're going to have a scene or the ball's going to be dropped occasionally. It has to be.
Yeah, and there are things. Maybe there are things in The Force Awakens that will qualify, and maybe even in Rogue One. If there are elements of those movies that I'd had a problem with, I've forgotten them since. But I don't remember having as big a problem with those films as I had on the first viewing of this film.
Is that because, I'm sorry if I'm going off an early tangent,
That's
is
right.
it purely because Ryan has pushed the Star Wars envelope more than anybody's ever seen before?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I loved it because of that, I think.
Yeah, it took me a day to work that out. And I'm being completely honest, I was really troubled. We're going to read a listener email in a few minutes that says a similar thing, but I got home about 4 a.m. after seeing my screening earlier in the week, and I couldn't sleep. My mind was just racing, because I was trying to work out why I left sort of 10% dissatisfied. And it was literally that. It was 90% of this movie was fantastic. Like 10% I was thinking, can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something I don't like, or there's something I'm uncomfortable with, you know. And it wasn't until after I'd had some time to think about it, like a whole day, that I realised, and I'd written out my review as well. I'd written the first draft of my review. It was 1,645 words I got to the end of. And I looked at it and I thought, I've just written a 1,645 word list of things I don't like about a Star Wars film, and I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not happy about that at all, because I'm usually more positive than that when it comes to Star Wars movies. I thought, why am I thinking this? I went through the issues I had, which I won't go into details of until we're in spoilers, but I went through a list and I thought, okay, yeah, no, I understand that. I thought, well, it's just, Ryan's just challenging me. And then the penny dropped and I realised, I thought, oh, well, this is what didn't get done in Force Awakens, and what we've been saying for the past 2 years Star Wars needs to do is challenge the audience. Take risks.
And I think that's why I got a kick out of it.
Be daring. This is what Stephen has said, right? That you just don't want to retread these stories.
No.
You want them treated with respect, and you don't want a filmmaker that's going to be cavalier. And I don't think Ryan's done that, but he's certainly taken chances, and he's certainly laced in some of his own idiosyncrasies into this movie, and they are entertaining as all get out. They really are entertaining, but it's just, I look at a couple of them, and we'll get to the details in a bit, but I was thinking, really? And, you know, when I realised, well, this is what... Do you remember when we broke down Force Awakens, I said to you...
Tried to.
Yeah. I said to you, you need to learn how to watch this film, because it's a new Star Wars film.
Yeah,
and
but I don't want to learn how to watch the film.
No, we're so used to sort of sitting down, popping a DVD in, or pressing play on whatever format, and watching a film. We know where it starts, we know what the middle is, and we know how it ends. We're so used to that. We've been doing it for a decade. All of a sudden, another film drops, and we're like, don't like it. And it's just because we need to, we need to get used to that movie.
Well, that's the thing. When we saw TFA, I was disappointed because I wasn't given a new experience where, I just, push me off the edge, guys. Let me float and fall. I don't care how fast it is, but push me off the edge and let's see what happens at the bottom, which is what Ryan did. Abrams didn't do that. And because of the tried and tested material, I was like, no, I don't want to retread. I want a movie experience or a book experience or a TV experience where you have the guts from scene one to push me in reasonably uncharted territory, and let's go from there. And that's why I probably had a much more enjoyable time with this than I did TFA.
And that was Steve's position as well, wasn't it?
That's been Steve's. Yeah, we're very similar on that aspect, to be honest. I think he has a bit more loathing than I do. I'm just more incoming than he is, basically.
He does. He builds his part up. He does. He builds his part up, and he leans into that thing of the disgruntled Star Wars fanboy. But I think, like he just said a couple of weeks ago, watched TFA again, really enjoyed it. It's kind of because we're used to it now. It's been with us for a couple of years. We're all in double figures on our viewing numbers, and it's just it's one of those comfortable experiences like watching one of the OT or prequel movies. They're that familiar, you can just switch off, let it wash over you, and they are still a thrill ride.
Yeah, you can now, but remember the first time you saw them?
Yeah, I mean,
the idea is to not know what's coming.
Yeah.
In any shape or form, even if it's episode 33 of a big epic, set of whatever films, every next episode has still got to shock you and surprise you and so on.
Shouldn't be a retread. Shouldn't be a
retread. Never. You're going to tread on familiar themes, icons, ideals, but just steer it a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, and you'll be all right.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And one of the most beautiful things about last night for me was let's say the daring do of the director. That's the best way I can give it. The daring of the director was it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And the only thing I could say when I came out was thanks so much, seriously.
Yeah.
Sick as a dog and everything. Nat said to me the next day, was it worth it? I was like, you have no idea how much it was worth it. It's a long drive. It's the middle of the night. I got in at about 4:30, sick as a pig, but was it a great couple of hours? It was phenomenal.
Yeah. See, I left after my first viewing with a completely different set of feelings, especially how the movie ends, sort of the ultimate destination for this film. I just left thinking, do you know what? I'm not sure Ryan's done what I wanted him to do.
That's the problem. He didn't do what you wanted him to do.
And I'm not sure he's who should be in charge of another trilogy, because if he didn't land this one, how is he going to land 3?
He's given me a very wet palate.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that when we're free to talk about some of the issues in detail, in spoilers, which we might as well get to now. I mean, this is coming out on Monday, so I think anyone that's listening to a Star Wars podcast will have seen the film over the weekend. But if by any chance you haven't yet seen The Last Jedi, just stop this podcast now and come back, because we're going to enter into our spoiler section so we can speak freely and we can play the voicemails from our listeners who have seen the movie and have something to say about it. Some of it's positive, some of it not so much, and you'll get a mix of both, I think, from Paul and myself. So everything we talk about from now on is going to be spoiler related. So jump out and come back later when you've had a chance to see the film. Right, we're going. Shall we listen to Ross's voicemail before we get into
whatever order you want, sir?
Yeah, let's do this, because I think it might stimulate a bit of conversation between us if we get into Ross's conversation. So
might even get into a bit of a debate. This is good.
It might be a debate.
You're wrong, by the way. Whatever.
Thanks. Here we go. This is a voicemail from Ross, one of our patrons, Ross Williamson.
So, just back from the TFA Last Jedi double bill. Had about a 40-minute drive back home just to process what I've seen, and I feel like Christmas 1991, where handed a package, was really wanting a Game Boy, opened it up and there was a jigsaw inside. Really flat, really deflated. Yeah, Last Jedi didn't meet my expectations. Lots of reasons. Too much forced humour. Finn naked running around a ship with water pouring out of him. Comedy fall off the trolley before that. Porgs, rocks falling on the keepers in Acto. Luke wiping dust off his shoulder in the finale. Just out of context with my perception or interpretation of Star Wars as it's been in the past. Yeah, disappointing. What do you make of Leia flying back to the ship after being blown up? Again, where did that come from? Not got a clue. Making up things as they go, I think. I know she's force sensitive, but where's that been? It used to have been easier for so many people just to have finished Leia at that point. Audience would never have expected her to have gone within first 15-20 minutes of the movie. And to be honest with you, she offered nothing after that. Very, very little. So I don't really get that at all. What did we actually learn on Acto with Luke? Again, very little from what I made of things. Phasma, what an absolute waste. Absolute waste of a potentially great character. What was that, 6-7 minutes screen time in total? The weekend area, Gwendolyn talking about strong women in movies. Phasma anything but. Criminally underused. Not happy with that. And Snoke, again, what another letdown.
Sorry. Phone died there. Here's a continuation. Someone that powerful killed in that way. Not really realistic, to me anyway. DJ, uninteresting. Irritating stutter, offered nothing as a character, predictable. Yeah, child actors in Canto Bite. Made me shudder. Think back to the Phantom Menace, and I think the last scene of the movie filled me full of dread. We got another child actor there with a mop. And they killed Akbar. How could you kill Akbar? Gutted. I thought Crate was an anti-climax. Guerrilla Walkers, why bother? What were they there for? Show? Didn't really do anything. There's a positive though. I thought Daisy and Adam's performances were absolutely fantastic and worthy of those Oscar nominations. I'm going to see it again tomorrow. Hopefully I might see one or two things I didn't pick up in the first screening. I think perhaps seeing it straight after TFA is a problem, because for me that movie was just so much better in terms of story, pace, characterisation. So much better. For me, it's better than The Phantom Menace, slightly better than Attack of the Clones, but yeah, that's where it sits for me. Yeah, really gutted, guys, really gutted. But yeah, let's see how tomorrow's second viewing goes. Hope you guys had a decent night. Catch you later.
Right, Ross, I got to say thank you for such a comprehensive voicemail.
It was good.
I've made some notes of Ross's points. I think
I hope so.
we should address them a point at a time, because I think, he's made the effort to give us this lovely voicemail. Let's sort of break it down and address his points.
Have you got notes with you? Yeah.
I've got them with me. I've just written them as we go on.
You can fire bullets then, mate. It's the easiest way to do it.
I will do. I try and go into the voicemails as blind as possible. I listen just for audio quality, and if I need to brush them up, I often do. But I try and keep the content until we record, so that I'm as fresh as you guys. But the interesting thing about Ross is this reaction was after his initial screening. He saw it again today, and he completely changed his mind.
Are you serious?
He came around.
That's beautiful.
Not 100%. He still had some problems.
Right.
But this is what I've found, you see, Paul, and this is what I think. I was chatting in a Facebook Live before we recorded to Rob Phillips and a couple of the other guys about going and seeing it a second time, because the things that we do smash into, these points that Ross has just mentioned that we're going to go through in a second, the things that people seem to hit like bumps in the road, once you know they're coming on the second screening, you just breeze straight past them, and then you can kind of get lost in the heart of the story. So there are challenging moments, that they are idiosyncratic, but on the repeat viewings they kind of disappear. They're not something that I think will plague us as fans as we continue to watch this film. Plague us, yeah. They won't plague us. They won't plague us. So let's look at his points. Let's talk about the humour. Now, we both mentioned the humour as a plus at the top of this episode. So what did you make of the humour that Ryan's layered into this Star Wars movie?
I've got to be honest, there's a few bits that I think I took as jokes, but I didn't laugh at them. But at the same time, they didn't bother me. They were just light touches, if that makes sense. There seems to be a few voices that are almost a little miffed about. It's like, well, why? These kind of things happen. This happens in all films. You get throwaway scenes, you get throwaway visuals, you get throwaway one-liners all the time. But yeah, it's like the rocks and the caretakers and stuff. I just kind of giggled, to be honest. I didn't, but that was it. The giggle had come and gone. I didn't think they were judge-worthy, issues. The back to fluid and thing. I actually thought that was quite funny.
I thought it was
for a
hilarious.
minute. And then he wants to hug his friends and stuff, and he doesn't know where to go. And I thought, yeah, that's good. And it was a laugh that lasted 4 or 5 seconds. But then throw away. They were throw away funny moments, and that's what you're supposed to do with them. Don't forget the film is aimed 12 to 250-year-olds, so they need those little hooks as well.
That is a really good point, actually, Paul, because I was thinking, the humour, after my first viewing, I thought, well, the humour was inconsistent. It swings.
That ain't all aimed at you, mate.
It swings wildly from, I'd say, Raiders of the Lost Ark levels of wit. The writing, especially for Oscar Isaac, and that guy is so competent. He is fantastic as Poe, and he can switch gears between dramatic side.
He has a good tonal delivery.
Yeah, he's a lot like Harrison Ford in that respect, and of course he's tremendously charming as well, which helps. But he does that whole thing at the start, and this is again, I think, present in The Force Awakens when he does the whole thing like, do you talk first or I talk first? And I can't really understand you with all the apparatus. Those sort of lines. But in this one, that whole thing where he has a message for General Hux, and then Hux launches into his whole tirade, and it goes back to Poe, and he's like, yeah, I'm holding for General Hux.
Yeah.
That slayed me. Absolutely destroyed me.
It was just a great Mickey take.
It was just brilliant. It's that matinee level of humour. It's so beautifully judged.
It was no different to me. Do I talk first? You talk first? It was just him
really
leveling, saying, look, you can think what you want. You've got all the technology and the power in the world, but you are no better than me.
It just
and
gave
you need
him
to
the
be
power,
as scared of you need to be as scared of me as you want me to be scared of you.
Yeah.
And that's what that line was about.
He would not be intimidated. It just sort of shows how courageous he is when he's in that tiny little ship. Yeah. He's facing down this gigantic thing and he's still making jokes. I thought that was brilliant. But the whole thing with the green milk, that to me was aimed at a much I didn't think of it in those terms at the time because, I'm a Star Wars fan, so I'm thinking, well, this movie was made for me personally, and that doesn't work, so I want my money back. That whole thing with Luke taking the green milk from the sea beast on the beach, definitely aimed at the younger audiences, and I imagine...
All right, he's on an island in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, the planet could be almost 95% oceanic. What's the guy supposed to do?
No, I know. But without sort of trying to apply any logic to it, it just didn't work.
That as a humorous scene, so how sad is that?
You didn't take it as humorous?
No, not at all. I just took it as a guy that was getting a drink.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding either.
And it did.
He looks at her with this kind of angry, wry smile.
Yeah, that to me was kind of a... It was kind of a play on Yoda sort of trying to drive the unwanted visitor away, How diligent are you? Are you going to put up with this if I'm being this weird and off-putting?
Exactly. To be honest, it was a visual test for her to deal with, number one, the fact that, look, I do this, watch me do this. And number two, you might have to do it as well. Can you deal with that? Yeah. And at the same time, he was simply having a drink. I mean, look at his daily shopping routine.
Yeah, it's that whole scene, and then the other thing that Ross mentioned as well is the caretaker's pushing a little wheelbarrow along, and then Rey's rock that she slices with the lightsaber as that plows down the hill through their little wheelbarrow, and it's like a Monty Python-esque.
It was a bit Roadrunner, wasn't it?
It's like she just the one that was pushing the wheelbarrow just stops and kind of looks up and I just thought that was brilliant. Just
holding two bones.
I really found that hilarious.
I sniggered a bit at the same time, but then I'm thinking for one moment, look, if anyone's taking this too seriously, they're wearing old lady smocks.
Yeah.
Over it. This is the kiddies end of the Star Wars spectrum.
That is it. It's a notch up from the poodoo jokes of the prequels.
Little Johnny and little Julie don't care about the political side of this. They get confused.
Yeah.
They're waiting for space fights. They're waiting for lightsabers. And they're also waiting for the cute creatures that are going to scream and laugh and so on. So, remember how bored you were the very first time you saw Star Wars and they were in the, the Imperial...
The boardroom.
Yes. Do you remember how bored you...
At least this
8.
stuff...
Come on, move on.
At least some of this stuff is aimed at us. Like, the other end of that humorous scale with the writing for Poe, with the I'm on hold for General Hux, all that stuff is aimed directly at us. And that really landed with me, very much so. So, yeah, I think some of the humorous moments, Ross has assessed them as feeling forced. But I think as we've sort of discussed here tonight, that I think they're aimed at a very broad audience and they need to work on multiple levels. I'm sure if you had children with you, if you take your family to see that film, and they're going to be giggling at that moment with the milk. It's their turn, and you'll be laughing along with them. So when we go as fanboys, certainly in my case, I just lost sight of that because I was thinking, well, this film's for me. Why is that in there? That's not for me. But then, now I understand.
It's interesting because, I'm not digging, but the whole thing with TFA was we've got to bring on board a whole new audience and carry the ones we've been carrying for so long.
Yeah.
And yet it sounds like this new audience people are already trying to forget them straight away because, TLJ is not delivering what the fanboys want all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's like, no. There's a whole new tread of people coming and this is going to happen. And you're going to get it in the next film as well. This is they're selling seats to everyone.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this sort of lays the groundwork for JJ's movie so that it can be a little bit more daring because we are acquiring the skill set required now to adapt to this new feel of Star Wars film. The other thing that Ross mentioned, he goes over the map a little bit with these bullet points. We're talking about the end of the movie now. We're in spoilers, so we can speak freely. Luke brushing the dust off of his shoulder when he's in that scene. Again, it's more humour on Crate, and Kylo Ren has just had the First Order troops unload on Luke outside the base, the Resistant space, and then he emerges from the centre of all of that firepower from devastation, basically a big crater in the ground, and just brushes the dust off of his shoulder. Now, I looked at that, I thought that's a bit cheesy.
I thought it was great.
You thought that was great?
Yeah.
Because it is a shorthand, isn't it? It is a shorthand communicating something.
Yeah, is that the best you got?
Yeah. And of
Yeah.
course, it has to be a little bit larger, I suppose. to
The
sort of
issue with
indicate
that at the same time, though, Mark, is let's take into context what's really going on in that scene. And if you take into context what we see 5 minutes later, what's actually going on in that scene, it's quite beautiful what he did, I think.
Yeah, I think we'll get through Ross's other bullet points, and then maybe we'll talk about that scene a little bit, because that's something that really stood out to me for a number of reasons. But let's jump over that, and because we're going to circle back to talk about that Luke v. Kylo scene, Space Leia. I've heard people refer to it as the Mary Poppins moment or the
Mary
Superman
Poppins
moment.
Yep.
What did you make of that? I know we spoke about this
Right.
briefly last night.
My first feeling was that the producers and the directors, it's like, you monkeys, you've got us. This is how we say goodbye. And thank you. And I actually sat there quite emotional, and I was like, literally thanking Carrie quietly, thinking, this is actually quite beautiful. I mean, she's got this frost and this sort of angelic, ethereal image, and we're just going to say goodbye. And it was like, okay, fine, if that's the way it's done, that's the way it's done. But I've always said that. I said I had no issue with us, honorably saying goodbye to Carrie, Leia, in some kind of battle scene or whatever it may well be. That's actually okay. And then obviously what comes next is this sort of regeneration situation. Now, you can, I'm not going to go too much into the science of it, but as much as people think that we all explode the minute we go into outer space, it's actually not true whatsoever. Human body will probably last anything up to about a minute out there, then you'll get complete asphyxiation. You might boil because of obviously the vacuum blood pressures and things, and your body's working. But at the same time, there's another film to come. So I've been open-minded enough to think we actually don't know who might have done that for her either.
Right.
We know she's force sensitive, but maybe she's a bit more than force sensitive, and she's never done anything before, but if she had to, she could. And I just took it on board that in a deep moment of desperation, number one, as a life-saving situation for herself, and number two, as just one of her moments, other than, she's never had a moment with the force, has she, in any shape or form?
No, not that we've seen.
I'm like, okay, if that's the direction they're going, I've got no real problem with that. It looked a little odd, yes. I mean, it was a bit this gliding popping situation.
It did jar me. I found it very jarring. It was one of those things that, like I say, it's a bump in the road, and there should never be a moment that pulls you out of the movie, even for a second. But that whole thing of her, it's basically just using the telekinesis to pull herself back to the ship instead of like pulling an item to her. So it is something we've seen before.
And there's the argument of how much pressure might have been coming from the bay that she was still being possibly assisted by.
There's that, but the way I sort of wrapped my head canon around it to make sense of it, because I was bothered by it, and the next couple of minutes I was kind of thinking, I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I guess if there's atmosphere being vented from that ship, the atmosphere that left the ship with her and with Akbar and the others, that might have been enough to sort of keep her alive for the few moments it takes for her to like engage with the force and pull herself back into the craft. I used headcanon to sort of explain it away, and I shouldn't be tripping over those things necessarily. But having said that, second view through, it kind of bugged me less. So although, I think it is one of those more challenging moments, Ryan's done it because he wanted to build on something for that character and use the toolkit that he'd got, like this skill set that the Jedis have.
Well, like I said, I'm also wondering if there was assistance there that we might learn more of later.
Yeah, maybe. I think with Carrie's absence and by extension Leia's absence from the next movie, maybe they won't spend any time on it. But it could have been a consideration at the time. But it would have worked.
Of course, yeah. Let's be honest. All previous bets are off, aren't they? So.
Yeah. All I've heard so far from people is that they thought this was a great way to lose the character of Leia in this movie. But I think it would have forced the story in a certain direction, and Carrie was really required. Leia was really required for the story to end up going where it went, with Holdo and Poe and things like that.
I mean, was it Ross left the VM for us?
Yeah.
Yeah, he mentioned something about the waste of a character afterwards, but it's actually not correct, I'm afraid, because there was a fundamental scene later that Carrie was, Leah was the absolute essence of something else. So
she's quite tightly wound into Holdo's story and
without doing much,
and Poe's character development, isn't she? And it's very economic storytelling. But her influence over those events becomes
massively
very
key
clear.
without actually being physically present. Yes.
There is something we're going to get to later on, I think, where it's mentioned in another voicemail. There is something that could have better served Carrie and the character of Leia, but we'll circle back to that later. I'm pretty sure it pops up in Mark's voicemail, but let's just very quickly talk about the character of Phasma being underused. Is that true in your estimation?
To me, wasn't important. I mean, in all honesty, I didn't attach to Phasma at all in TFA. Phasma, as far as I'm concerned, is just another lead general of a squadron. Lead generals come and go in battle all the time. So the fact this one stood out for me didn't actually have any bearing.
Yeah.
So the fact that she came along again in this film and she had her comeuppance really, really quickly, again, had no bearing. Seriously, because generals are promoted and killed all the time.
Yeah, we've seen a parade of that tier of character over the years, haven't we? Admiral Piet and General Veers. There's been a parade of that level, that tier of character in Star Wars.
I can understand where he's coming from. He was talking about the female character.
Yeah, this is the problem. I think that you've got
the boost that the female character had, and it actually wasn't apparent at all. No,
Captain Phasma has the potential to be kind of a Boba Fett level fan favorite character, and Gwendolyn Christie is wonderful, and there should have been and by those considerations, Phasma's criminally underused in both films, but she serviced the story.
Underused in both films, or was she criminally overhyped in both films?
That is an excellent point, and it's kind of they are two sides of the same coin, aren't they? And it depends what agenda you bring. No,
I didn't understand.
Agenda's a little bit too pointed, but
in CFA, frankly, I didn't get it. It's just like it's just a captain telling their troops what to do because she's silver. Does that make her any more important? But from the point of view of outside story and figures and comics and everything else, the story was really boosted, and obviously with Gwendolyn playing her, it was enormously boosted to us.
The hype surrounding these characters sometimes hacks away at them, doesn't it?
Never attached to it in TFA time because I was like, there's all this hype, but Phasma doesn't actually offer that much. Sorry, I didn't get it. There you go.
Yeah,
so
because she didn't have enough to do.
And it gave Finn a cool moment.
It did. Maybe too cool, but perhaps we'll discuss how far they went with that exchange a little bit later. But DJ. Did you get much out of the character of Benicio del Toro's DJ?
Yeah, with DJ, I didn't know what to expect, and this is a two sides of the same coin situation, because the unfortunate issue with DJ was DJ as a character was simply someone they needed to hack into a computer, right?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't the target, but it wasn't the target they went.
But he was a resource.
It's
period,
it's what they ended up with. Yeah, as a resource.
He is simply a resource. Unfortunately, the resource was cast as Benicio del Toro, so you expect more from that resource when you see the film.
Exactly.
So I decided to take away the idea. If this was anybody but Benicio del Toro, I wouldn't actually care about the longevity of this character. But the fact that you cast someone like Benicio, you really need to pay a bit more license to how far that character might go. But I decided to go with the characterization instead of the casting in the end. Right. And the guy did what he was required to do. So as a resource, he was used, and then he abused the system. It was a bit Han Solo. I've got my money, and I'm going to go with the money, and blah, 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 blah. Sorry if I'm going down another spoiler tangent. But
that's fine. We're in spoilers.
At the end of the day, I didn't expect any more because he was still a crook. I mean, if you're a hacker in those situations, you're generally a cool crook, for want of a better word. So from the characterization point of view, I didn't have a problem with it. But I'm like, don't cast someone so high level if you've got no real intention of maybe building the character up a little bit more. So it was a bit odd.
There's the betrayal there as well. There's that significant element of that character arc. It didn't surprise me.
No, he was a businessman.
Yeah, I think we all kind of called that going in, that he would be their downfall.
And DJ is.
My problem is with Benicio's characterization. It seemed to depend largely on a bunch of nervous tics and stutters. He didn't really seem to have a lot more to bring to it than that.
No, almost nothing, to be honest. But I thought the tick was more of a ironical. I thought he was actually I thought that was almost sarcasm. I don't think the tick was real.
No.
I think it was just him mocking them.
You know, they didn't.
Like, you need me a lot more than I need you. I'm going to get what I want out of this, and then you're not going to see me anymore.
I didn't get any of that from it. I just, all I found was that I found the tick, the stuttering, which ironically I've just done. I found that to be distracting more than anything else, and he had an opportunity there to play a character that, you know, it's basically Lando's character from Empire Strikes Back. He had an opportunity to play it on those terms, but instead he went really wide and played straight.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't for 1 second assume that the character was going to have any honour at all.
No,
Seriously, didn't have think. No, I was waiting for him to give him the finger in some shape or form.
Well, he certainly did that. I'm not fussed whether we see this character again or not, but he will be the thing that bugs me whenever I watch this film now, I think. And obviously I think Ross is on the same page.
He was a resource that served a purpose.
Yeah, he had story responsibilities.
And it was overcast.
Ross also mentions the kids on Canto Bight and the kid at the end with the mop. Now, this is an entirely weird situation. What's the purpose? What's the intention there, do you think?
I think just casting light on what can be.
Right, what might be coming next, or
yeah, well, not even that. It was just what can be, basically, you know, regardless, because the situation the kids were in before to the situation the kids were now in had changed. The kids were certainly, the kid was certainly feeling a bit more free about life. And correct me if I'm wrong, when the kid went outside, the broom moved on its own. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he called the broom to him with the force.
I'm like, there's something else here. There's more to come. This isn't. The Rebel Alliance and the Jedi is not quite as alone as they think they are. So the fact that the kid could do that, he's got that from somewhere else as well. Who knows how big this network and this web could possibly be? That's what I took from it.
Yeah, and I think that it's laying the groundwork for where we might go later on in the saga, in terms of Rey now being the custodian of those ancient Jedi texts.
Big time, yes.
Because Luke snuck those onto the Falcon, and her obviously being focused. That character going in a direction I didn't imagine. Rey, sort of, I thought she was going to go.
None of us saw that coming, did they?
No, he did. he that was a master stroke. That changing the perception of those characters for me. But
he was drip feeding it all the way through, but he just didn't go there.
No, that was fantastic. Really,
the other thing with the
judged.
Kid was, I don't know about you, but it reminded me. I don't know if you've seen it. I think you might have only ever seen it in a DVD extra, but it simply reminded me of this kid, this unbeknownst to himself, even this young kid. He's sweeping the floors of these stables. He looks up, and he's seeing this thing go across the sky, which reminded me of Luke. Happened to be looking at a battle from Tatooine. I was like, I actually thought it was just paying a little bit of an homage on the scene, but then I thought, well, maybe there's a bigger picture here as well.
That's precisely what I think it is, Paul. That's exactly, I think, the point that Ryan was trying to make. I think he was saying this never ends. It never ends. You have, if we go right back to the beginning of the saga, you have Anakin, impoverished little boy who was a slave on a desert planet with these big dreams, and then the next generation is this impoverished young man in the form of Luke, who is trapped in this lifestyle as a farm boy through dedication to his parents, for want of a better term, his aunt and uncle, who again is always looking off into the distance, wistfully thinking about a life that could be. And then Rey, who we just met in The Force Awakens, doing exactly that, impoverished, almost enslaved to a situation, trapped on a backwater world. And now we've met these kids, and they're analogues for those characters we already know. They are there to say, yes, we are the disenfranchised, and we exist out here, and some of us have the capacity for greatness.
You have no idea what we are capable of.
That's that little boy with the mop. He could be Anakin, Luke, or Rey.
I love that little scene.
So it's like a post-credits scene. It's a tag that you would expect to see squirreled away like an Easter egg.
Yeah, because when it happened, I had no hesitation in leaving the theatre.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird moment, but I do think that's what Ryan was intending. He wanted to communicate that yes, this never ends. And I think Snoke, who we're going to discuss just in a second, but Snoke has a line that kind of, I think, we nailed this point weeks and weeks ago, where we said that there's a chance that maybe it's not balanced, but I was kind of packaging this theory as a bit as an explanation of what balance is. That when a dark side user rises up, a light side user will be called into action, and vice versa. When the Jedi rise, the darkness rises up to me, and that's a line from Snoke, and will bring down the establishment. So Luke's Jedi Order was brought down by Snoke's tampering on the outside because the Force has done this thing to stimulate that kind of balance. Snoke positions himself in this movie saying that Kylo Ren's ascension to power, he watched and waited for the light side to rise. He thought that was going to be Luke, and it wasn't. It was this girl from out of nowhere. So he kind of knew. That's an insight from this movie that
he made no bones of it, did he?
No, he knew what he was looking
Just sat
for.
waiting.
So that there is, like Ryan's take on this seems to be that there is always going to be this sort of rise and fall through the galaxy of Force-capable individuals that come up. Some will be good and their intentions will be pure, and some of them will be purely selfish and hate-filled, and that's your light and dark side continually renewing themselves. It doesn't matter what label they slap on themselves. Like Kylo Ren had a line, didn't he? Like, let's just get rid of all of it. The Empire, the First Order, the Sith, the Jedi.
Yes.
Let's just become something new. Sensibilities we've heard from Anakin when he was Anakin and Anakin when he was Vader, and that's kind of passed down to Ben Solo, isn't it? That's the intention is let's be these dictators and make the world the thing we want it to be.
Very Animal Farm, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We are more equal than others. But let's talk about Snoke on the last of Ross's bullet points, and let's talk about Snoke and his exit from this franchise. This I did not see coming.
We weren't supposed to, mate. And that's what made it so wonderful.
I was like laughing to myself.
It was brilliant
in the
Seriously.
theatre because I thought
our Snoke theories sucked.
They really did suck, but Ryan just pulled the rug out from everybody. And I went to a slightly more cynical place afterwards because I spent sort of 24 hours struggling with this film and trying to work out what I really thought of it. And whilst I was in that place, I was thinking about this dispatching Snoke so early on, and I thought, why have we done that? Are we just trying to retcon The Force Awakens now? Is Ryan just thinking, no, don't like what Lawrence and JJ did with Snoke, I'll just kill him off. And no, I don't like, we'll talk about Rey's parentage as well in a little bit, but I don't like what they've done with Rey's parentage, so we're just going to wrap that up and get shot of that. I don't know, I don't necessarily think that now, but did you have any concerns about the motivations behind getting rid of a character like Snoke?
Not at all. None at all. Seriously. No, throw a spanner in the spokes, that's what I say. He was another resource.
Certainly did that.
Whose resource was he? It was Kylo's.
Yeah.
That's how strong Kylo became.
It was only to push the Kylo character where he needed to be in this film.
I know, but at the same time, I mean, we don't even know. Maybe Kylo's been engineered. Maybe Kylo half-engineered that. Luke was that scared of Kylo. He was that scared of Kylo. So all the time that Snoke's sitting there saying, I've planned all this, I planned all that, at the same time, he's like, well, have you?
Well, I think it's... Do you know what, Paul, this is the interesting thing now about this film. I think there's a tighter knot here that we're going to be fiddling with now as we become more and more familiar with this film. I think there's a tighter knot in place. That we can look at it and think, you can take it at face value. Snoke's this powerful being, yep, and Kylo's his underling, right. Now, he bullies Kylo until Kylo does the inevitable, which is stand up and strike out and remove the bully. That's the dynamic we can see if you accept it at face value. Now, all that stuff with Luke's story about how Ben was pushed because it looked like Luke was going to kill him because of his potential for darkness. I can't help but think that Snoke might have had a hand in that, giving Luke the visions that he was having, giving Luke, like, on one side Snoke's like this puppet master, right? So on one side Snoke's putting strings on Ben saying, you're better than this, you're being held back, you can attain greatness like your grandfather if you just do what you need to do and take some chances and, kill a bunch of people. But then with Luke, Snoke's also, I think, probably responsible for giving him those visions saying, look how dark your nephew is. You're going to lose control. Lives will be lost because you're arrogant and you're failing. I don't think Luke came to those conclusions on his own. I think Snoke had something to do with that.
I think you're giving Snoke too much credit.
Do you?
big time, because Snoke didn't even see that his own. He didn't even see the lightsaber sitting next to him spinning around, for crying out loud. He should have sensed it. He should have seen it. He didn't, because he was too arrogant.
Well, this is
Snoke was not as powerful as people have thought he was.
Let's discuss that, because that's another thing where I thought, well, I don't know. You know, you and I have both had a hand in creating a story with the book we've done with Matt. So in there, one of the rules we kind of live by is you create an internal structure, you create a set of rules, and you play by those rules. Then the audience will accept what you're doing. If you break your own rules, the people consuming your product don't know what you're doing. So they don't know what rules count and what don't. With this, it seems to me like Snoke. What I had to accept in order for it to make sense to me is that Snoke thinks so little of Kylo Ren. He never thought for a second that Kylo Ren would be capable of pulling the wool over his eyes. So being consistent to the story is that Snoke is always belittling and berating and bullying Kylo Ren. He clearly doesn't respect him. He clearly underestimates him at this point and never thinks for a second that A, Kylo Ren would stand up to him and challenge him, and B, and I think he says as much, and B, he doesn't think that he's capable, because he's actually in the middle of using that exact dialogue. I can read this guy's mind. I know exactly what he's going to do next, and he hasn't got it in him to sort of pull the wool over my eyes. And whilst he's doing it, of course, Kylo is doing precisely that. He's moving one lightsaber.
That's how strong Kylo was, and how above Snoke's station he was.
Yes, exactly. So that's basically something I looked at first. Thought, oh, how can you can't do that. You can't dispatch Snoke like that, because it makes Snoke look weak. But what it actually does is it makes Kylo look strong.
It makes Kylo look stronger.
It makes Snoke look arrogant.
Kylo's become Vader now. That's it.
Yeah, and Snoke is basically Palpatine, isn't it? His arrogance is his weakness.
His arrogance is his weakness. Yes.
That's the thing. So I'm completely perplexed why you would dispatch such a wonderful character as Snoke.
Because he's a resource. He's nothing but a resource for Kylo Ren.
And I hope that's what he is. I hope it shows that the character we're going to get... Now, we've said this all along. Whilst we're looking at Rey, we should have been looking at Kylo Ren, because I think Kylo Ren is the real central figure in this Skywalker story, being the Skywalker. He's the one. I hope that Snoke's been sacrificed now, because they're giving us something in Kylo Ren that's so much better, that's so much more fulfilling. And I'm not even sure I'm worried about that being redemption at this point. It's just... I'm
still puzzled as to why Snoke has to matter so much here. All you saw was a hologram on a bridge screaming orders at people. No backstory, but everybody required an enormous, powerful backstory. Why?
Yeah. It's because it's unknown, Paul. That's what it is.
That's the thing, and that's why I love this film so much.
We were just looking for sure footing.
Everybody in the knees here. It's great fun.
We just, as fans, we just want sure footing. You know, we want that, what we just said, you create an internal structure of rules.
Isn't it more fun when you don't have it?
Don't know. It sometimes it doesn't work, because you need those internal rules so that we know where we are in the story. We know, they create a set of rules that they abide by, and it gives us sure footing. With when you introduce a character like Snoke, we don't know what we're supposed to be thinking and feeling about that character.
And that's healthy now and again. You've got to throw that into the story. You've had your rules with Palpatine. You had your rules with Vader. You got your rules with Kylo to come. You got your rules with Luke. So if one character happens to drop those rules for you, all the more better and all the more healthy for storytelling.
Well, I think that the only issue with that is that we're asked to accept that this character has been enormously influential in getting the other characters, the other cast of characters, to the point they're at in this film. It would have been nice to have had some kind of context for...
Well, no, primarily we're only really talking about his relationship with Kylo, right?
Well, his relationship with Kylo, his relationship with the First Order, with the Republic, with Luke.
Well, he just happened to work for the First Order and tell people what to do, but we don't know how long for.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I know, speaking personally, that is something I would have liked. I would have liked some context for that character, where he came from, how he seized power, what his influence was over Ben, over Luke, his impact on Leia. Everyone seemed to know who he was. And now the dispatching of that character so soon means I'm probably not going to get those answers.
We don't know what's coming in the next film.
No, we don't. It would seem a bit strange to sort of go back and explain that now when that character won't be on screen again. But I don't know. It was a huge surprise, and I think it ended up being a positive thing because of where it left Rey and Kylo, and how that dynamic ended up pushing to a point where it inevitably had to break the dynamic between Kylo Ren and Rey.
I actually thought that was very well paced. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, we can look at that. We can talk about that a bit more in a moment. But I think that's everything from Ross's observations that we've kind of discussed there. And some of it I'm cool with and I understand, and some of it not so much. The Snoke thing, I'm still not sure I really fully understand the decision made and whether that decision was the right one for me personally. But, you know.
Kings are killed, Mr. Garrison.
Yeah, this is true. Let's move on to JFK, kids. Let's move on to Jean-Paul Sinclair's email. So I asked everyone to sort of give us an idea of what they got out of this movie.
Quite long. Okay.
Yeah, this is right. We'll just read through it and we'll see what JP thought of it. So he says, here's my review and thoughts after going to a midnight screening. The Last Jedi left me speechless. I'd enjoyed and been thrilled at so much by the end of the film, with everything swirling around my head, I couldn't sleep. I loved its humour, so basically the opposite of Ross's position there. I loved its humour. The Luke lightsaber bit was astoundingly funny. We'll come back to that in a second. So many funny bits across all characters at various times. I really can't do it justice. Its story was great with Luke, Ben and Rey's story. The story was great with Luke. Ben and Rey's story was riveting. The characters were excellent, and I was delighted that I got a Star Wars story that appealed to me and not a younger audience. Again, that's kind of the inverse to some of the readings taken
This
from
is what we
other people.
looked at, yeah.
I was surprised how much they fitted in. It felt like the end of a two-part film, not a trilogy. It surprised me at many times. I was stunned that Snoke died, almost killed off before we'd seen him with any substantial menace. I had issues with Canto Bight. The casino didn't work for me. I've heard people say, and this is kind of my opinion as well, Paul, that was a little bit too much like the prequels, a little bit too close for comfort. With that menagerie of kind of creatures, but the menagerie of creatures belongs in Star Wars, I guess. The kids, this is JP again. The casino didn't work for me. The kids felt forced into the story and made me think of the younglings in the prequels. The ring on the kids' finger made me cringe. That's the ring with the hidden rebel insignia. DJ didn't fit as well as I had hoped, which I blame on Canto Bight, although I liked his character and they could have done more with it. I had an assumption that he might be like Lando in Empire when he would turn good, but it didn't really, and I didn't really like that. But he didn't, and I didn't really like that. I did wonder whether we were going to take an easy option and kill Leia in the explosion. Given Carrie's passing, it would have been almost easier on the narrative if she'd been killed off then, rather than leave a massive issue that now remains for Episode 9. I get that it would have meant reshooting so much of the film to not include her. I didn't like Leia using the Force to save herself in space. It just felt really out of place with her character and her story. So kind of what we've already discussed, and a lot of people are reading it the same way from the conversation I'm seeing online. JP continues, I'm also gutted about the death of Luke. So that's the big one.
Which now, we haven't actually said out loud yet as well. So
no, so we should really put the word death in inverted commas, because I'm not sure it's as cut and dried as that right now. So JP has said he's gutted about the death of Luke, which is again why I think I was struggling to understand at the end of the movie how I felt about it. I know Mark, that's me, says that being dead is no excuse to being in Star Wars, but it will considerably affect how much his role and screen time is for Episode 9 and the story arc they have without Han, Luke, and sadly now without Carrie and by extension Leia. I realise that my opinion seems to focus more on the issues I had, and I want to stress I'm far from dumping on this movie. I think it may already be the best movie except for A New Hope, which is your position, Paul.
Pretty much.
Which I expect to confirm in future viewings over the next couple of days. I guess it's just the ongoing concerns for Episode 9 that are weighing heavily on my mind. Time is on JJ's side. I do look forward to seeing where he goes. JP, thank you so much for your incredible insights. You are in lockstep, I think, with many of us, but at different times. And this is what's amazing, I think, Paul, is how differently people can read the same film. If you consider the points Ross has just made to the points JP has just made.
That's what makes it fun, mate.
Isn't it? It's just this, for this film to work like this is incredible. Because you'd think if Ryan had gotten something wrong, most of us would be saying, no, he got it wrong. But it's so subjective. And it does, I think, depend on the sensibilities you bring to the movie with you.
It's also dependent on everybody's own relationship with Star Wars, period.
Yes.
You probably feel different about Star Wars than I do. We probably love it in equal measures, but you take different things from it. You take a lot more from Return of the Jedi than I do. I probably take a lot more from Empire Strikes Back than you do, and so on and so forth. So we've all got different relationships with these films because, I mean, we grew up with these, and they weren't just, they weren't just images and sound. We grew up with these as toys, as stories, as friends. We escaped with them in the Sunday night when we were pissed off. When Mum and Dad told us off, we went to our room. What do we put on? This is what we put on, and so on and so forth. So we've all got different hinges and memories and latches with every damn scene we've ever seen in this thing. So that's why we all take so many different subjective views on what comes next.
Yeah, that is a really good point. That we have all got this Star Wars shaped baggage that we lug around with us, and so when something pops up that doesn't fit neatly into the boxes we've shaped for it,
we've got to find a new pigeonhole for it.
Yeah, or we need to find, like we mentioned earlier, need to learn how to watch the movies. We need to find a way to integrate them into our existing Star Wars, and when that integration forces you to make room for things that you don't necessarily welcome, and some of that came in the prequels and George's special editions, it can be a prickly experience for a Star Wars fan. But when it's done the way 90%, in my estimation, of what Ryan, I'm talking about my personal experience here, 90% of what Ryan did with The Last Jedi, I can slot straight into my Star Wars experience without any problem. It's the 10% that I'm thinking, I need to force this in there somewhere. I need to learn how to
unlearn what you have learned.
Yeah, I now need to be able to. I now need to be able to enjoy a Star Wars where Luke is no longer with us. Now that this is the big reveal from, and this is probably the biggest point we should discuss from JP's wonderful feedback, is the loss of Luke. That just blew me away. Luke turning up on Crate was an incredible moment in that film, and I was very suspicious of it because of the change in his appearance. And I thought, well, he's probably tidied himself up, but the beard was darker. And I was thinking, if he's tidied himself up and dyed his beard, that's weird. But he did look very much like the Luke we'd seen in the flashback. And I think that was partly because that's the Force presence, we'll call it. Not necessarily a Force ghost because Luke was still alive. But
I've got a different take on it.
Oh, this will be interesting. So I'm viewing it as a Force presence that he projects onto Crate. And the first thing he does is an act of compassion and love and attending his sister and basically saying goodbye. And then the next thing he does is he goes to Ben to confront him. Mm-hmm. Now, this is all done remotely, and this is, I think, something that calls back to that book. We listened to the audiobook a little while ago called A Certain Point of View.
Yeah.
It was a clip, wasn't it, of Yoda and Obi-Wan, and it was Obi-Wan's Force ghost interacting with Yoda's physical world, pulled the blanket up over him and things like that. And I was thinking, have we seen that before? Have we seen Force ghosts interact with stuff? I think that might have been the seed being planted for us to appreciate what Luke can do here. So he can appear somewhere and interact physically with his environment, which is unusual because we haven't seen it before. And this is Ryan adding a spoke to the wheel. He's bringing something new to Star Wars lore and expanding on it. That's the stuff I think he's doing right. He's building in new elements to Star Wars, another way for us to enjoy Star Wars. So I saw that as Luke projecting himself onto Crate. It took an enormous strain on him, and by the end of it, he became one with the Force. But what's your reading on it?
No, all I was talking about was the physical attribute that he used.
His appearance, or
his appearance, and his appearance was almost. It was probably Leia's. Leia's.
Yeah.
It was Leia's and Kylo's last memory of him.
That is true, actually.
That's probably the last. That's the last image she remembers of Luke.
That's true.
That's why he did what he did. And if you remember the scene of him over Kylo with the lightsaber, that's exactly how he looked. So that's how he wanted to confront Kylo.
Yes. Oh, do you think it's the way he wanted to be seen, or is it necessary? Because we have this thing sometimes with the connections through the Force of you have your transmitter and your receiver. Which one requires the more power? You know, we said that as Luke gets more powerful, he seems to see Obi-Wan more clearly. Or is it that Obi-Wan's becoming more adept at being a Force ghost, and so he's getting better at projecting his form? It seemed to me the poetry and the romance is in Luke getting stronger, having more access to that vision. And in this respect, it would be Leia and Kylo seeing who they remember. It might as well be just audio of Luke, and then they're imagining the image of Luke that they last remember, rather than Luke projecting that image to them, saying, "See me like this." It's them thinking, "Well, this is who Luke is."
No, because he revealed himself to everybody.
This is true. Yeah, everybody saw him. Yes, so that's true.
Everybody saw him,
even
and
the droid.
He actually managed to almost physically supply the dice.
Yeah.
Which actually weren't there either at that point. But what he gave everybody was, this is the way you remember me, and this is the way I'm going to confront the situation.
Yeah.
And with the last memory, I mean, to be honest, it's interesting that Leia didn't crack that you should be a bit older. You're my twin, sort of thing. But maybe she knew as well.
Yes, maybe she fully understood.
But I thought that whole 8-9 minute section I thought was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, the confrontation with Ben. I mean, there's elements of humour in there with them on the what is Kylo Ren's?
On the gorilla.
No, they were in the ship, weren't they? They were in Kylo Ren's ship.
Oh, his little shuttle, yeah.
Yeah, I can't think what that's called. It's escaped me. But they were on the bridge of his shuttle, and so you had some of the humour of Hux sort of barking orders,
repeating everything I said. Yeah,
that was brilliant. That was hilarious. And then you get to see the insecurities of Kylo Ren and how he doesn't want to go and face Luke in person. And
he's got a big ego, mate.
He kind of gets dared into it almost, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm. He's got an ego.
The confrontation, I apart from the appearance of Luke, like his image, I accepted it that Luke was real at that point, and I thought, well, he's made his way to Crate. Don't know how.
I did.
And the lightsaber on his belt.
We knew Falcon was there.
And I was sitting there thinking that lightsaber is going to be white. He's going to ignite that. And he's built the Skywalker lightsaber again. And of course, none of that was real. It's all a projection. It's all just a trick.
Clever, wasn't it?
A wonderful trick. It was fantastic. It was really. And when the immortality, like being blasted by all of those weapons and surviving, and then getting struck by a lightsaber a couple of times and surviving, I thought, are we powering up the Jedi in this series now? Are we going up to 11?
This actually led to my single favourite simple moment of the entire film, where we had that little monologue at the end, what Luke had been building, and it was absolutely beautiful.
Can you paraphrase? Do you remember?
Yeah, he said, "I'm not the Last Jedi." You know, from there, he said, the war is coming. The Jedi are not dead, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got her with the rocks.
Yeah.
And that very subtle sort of, it's just like 15, 20 seconds. It was absolutely brilliant. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is what you're supposed to do with Star Wars sort of thing. I loved it, seriously.
And the whole thing was just Luke buying time for the rebels to escape.
They followed the old Huskies down the tunnels.
Yeah, we called that as well a couple of weeks ago, that would be a thing that they did after we saw that little documentary. There were some wonderful moments, really beautifully judged moments. Seeing Rey through Luke's eyes at the end of that movie, and seeing, like, because I had thought she was going to go to the dark side when we went into this movie, as we got closer and closer to the whole Reylo of it all, which I was dreading. As it was starting to kick off, the connection between her and Ben Solo, I was thinking, please don't go down this avenue. I don't want that to happen. I want them to be on opposing sides. And then seeing it pay off and seeing Rey through Luke's eyes as his potential successor, as the seed for the new Jedi Order, knowing she's got the books, it was. I'm sure some people will find a way to spin it into the Mary Sue of it all, but I thought it was wonderful, and it is kind of like the baton, the torch being passed.
Yeah, it was great
to someone anew. And one of JP's other comments was, it felt like the end of a 2-part series rather than the end of the middle chapter, and I think he's kind of right. And I was saying to someone the other day, this film kind of feels too big. It feels like we've picked up just before the credits should have rolled on A New Hope.
I thought the credits were going to roll as he walked out, as Luke was walking out through the hole in the door.
Oh, that would have been no.
I thought you're going to give us the credits, aren't you? Right now.
But it does kind of tear all the way through the original trilogy kind of storyline and land somewhere in Return of the Jedi. I haven't quite worked out where it is yet, but there's a lot of story in this film. A hell of a lot.
Yeah, no, there is.
But it seems to be quite well judged.
Going beyond the scene with the doors now, but I think from that point we actually did just go back to the Falcon, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. But mind you, saying all that time, I mean, God, Craig, another tangent. You've got the situation with who's Laura Dern?
Emmeline Holdo.
Oh, what a way to go!
Now, this was the thing, I don't know if you noticed, I put out...
I did see that,
yeah.
and I thought that was a ridiculously fantastic, beautiful piece of cinematography.
Yeah, we'd been given the heads up that there was this silent moment in the movie.
It was absolutely phenomenal.
And we knew it had to be poignant. Now, while this is on the table, let's discuss it now. So we lose Emmeline Holdo as she sacrifices herself in destroying the supremacy so that the rebels, and our first reference to God in a Star Wars movie as well, I think, Godspeed Rebels, the rebels can get to Crate. Now, firstly, let's get this out of the way. They're definitely moving from Resistance back to Rebels. That seemed to me...
it did seem to be that way, didn't it? Yeah.
When I was in cynical mode, it seemed to me like Ryan wanted to reclaim some of the original language and dispatch the concept of the Resistance. This is now a band of rebels again. And Emmeline Holdo, beautifully played by Laura Dern, I absolutely adored this character. She was in lockstep with Leia all along, even though she was being presented to us as someone to be suspicious about. She was completely in lockstep with Leia and decided to sacrifice herself for the greater good and destroy the supremacy. That, to me, Mark's going to mention this in his audio message, so spoilers for Mark's audio message. That character and that story should have gone to Leia. That would have been a way to handle Carrie's passing. That would have been a way to give Leia a significant ending.
Yeah, but it wasn't shot that way, was it? That's the thing. They were quite honest.
I think it could. Yeah, I mean, they didn't want to make any changes. I think they could have gotten away with it. It would have been some structural jiggery pokery to have got the exchange between Luke and Leia done, and get Holdo.
But if that had happened, you wouldn't have had the Luke and Leia exchange.
They would have had to move it around a little bit, and maybe it doesn't work. In fact, it probably doesn't work. But to me, I would have moved heaven and earth to have found a way to give Leia that moment and to give Carrie that moment, because that to me is exactly what she deserved.
I know, but we have the luxury of knowing what happened to Carrie. That's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
When they shot this, you've got to remember, you've got to completely throw the Carrie Fisher story aside at that point of production, unfortunately. I know I'm sounding mean, but that's the reality of the situation.
It is. It absolutely is.
It really is.
All right. We're going to move on. Let's move on now to another voicemail, because we've got a couple of voicemails and another email to get to, and I'm conscious of the fact that the time is rolling steadily on. So let's get over to Dave Donovan. Dave is another two-timer already. He's seen the movie twice. So let's get Dave's thoughts on The Last Jedi.
Hey lads, the morning after, eh? Me and my friend left the first screening and we were both furious. Like, what was that? What did we just watch? What has he done to Star Wars? And not because it didn't meet any expectations, it did. Got two of my big wish list numbers with Yoda and then Luke and Leia reuniting. That was amazing. Cried my eyes out at that. But still left the film really angry. Saw it again about an hour or two later, and really came around to it, a lot of it, but still freaked out. Like, so many amazing... It's just Star Wars in a different shape, and we're going to have to adjust to that. But the filmmaking problems in it, we can't fix. It repeats itself, like, numerous times. Rey tells Luke why she's there, like, twice or 3 times, and it doesn't need to do that. Poe has moments like that too. It just... I don't know. I think we'll probably, after an adjustment period, come to love it, but it's going to take some time. I really think it's going to take a lot of time. As for the ending with Luke, still can't process that. It hasn't landed. It's just hasn't landed. That's going to take a while. But other than that, I guess we'll have to go see it a few more times. Okay. Thanks a million.
I couldn't agree with him more. We are going to have to see this film a few more times.
It's funny. What did I say to you? Do you remember on text? We were talking on text, and you said I've got to go and watch it again. Do you remember what I said to you?
No. What was your response to that?
I said this does not need a second viewing.
One was enough for you.
Yeah, for me, yeah. It so knocked all of the nails in. It was great fun.
Yeah.
I'm really getting a kick out of being. Being on the TFA side of what happened a couple of years ago, to be completely honest. And the scene for me with Luke was special, and it was beautiful, and I thought it was a good closure, to be honest. And because it's not closure, because you're going to get a Force ghost, and he's going to be still teaching and giving words of wisdom to Rey in the next film and so on. And I thought it was... the whole way they dealt with him, and the image of him doing A, B, and C while he's sitting on the rock and processing this, and he was old, he was tired, he didn't have a lot of energy left, and it did literally just take the last midichlorian out of him, for want of a better term. And then we got the binary sunset, and I'm sitting there thinking, thank you so much, that was phenomenal. So I have no issue at all with Luke. I mean, in all honesty, I think even when they were processing the original pre-production notes, when this trilogy was probably announced, that the initial cast were told it's time to dilute, we're going on with a new set of faces and so on. So Luke handing them, you said he's handing the mantle over, sort of thing. I kind of expected it, I think, to a small degree, and I thought they did it beautifully.
Yeah, we'd mentioned it. We've kicked the can on that one before. I just don't think I wanted to see it. I think Dave and I are probably on the same page here. I didn't necessarily leave angry. I felt disappointed that.
Can I ask what you might have wanted to see then?
What, from the Luke story? I would have loved to see.
Was it just acceptance of losing Luke?
I would have loved to have seen Luke roll over. Yeah, being forced to say goodbye to the Luke character. I would much rather he roll over into the next movie, and if he's going to expire in that movie. But now we're going to have a Luke who will be presumably in ghost form in the next film, maybe on his own, maybe with Yoda, maybe with Obi-Wan, advising Rey. And I don't know if that's really what I wanted, but I think, if we set aside the fact that we lost Luke, if you look at the way we lost Luke, I think it was incredible. And even though he was on his own, it was kind of on his terms. He'd said at the start of the movie, I came here to die. And that's what he did. But he had
no interest on serving anybody, don't forget.
He had one incredible act left in him, and he did it. And the whole thing of seeing that sunset and having that rising score at the end was incredible. And just that beautiful sort of disappear and then the cloak kind of blow away was a wonderful moment. And then hearing Daisy...
You're taking the words out of my mouth, the peace and purpose, yeah.
Yeah, having Rey sort of frame it for us so that it wasn't tragic, it's not sad, there's more behind it. I think it was a deliberate act on Luke's part, becoming one with the Force, so it's less tragedy, it's more about recalibrating now so that we go into episode 9 with new expectations of what that character is going to be and what his responsibilities to the story are going to be. And the great thing is that we can keep him around forever. Because, even if Mark doesn't want to do this forever, or Mark can't do this forever, technology is evolving where we can replicate a blue ghost Luke, in future films if we want to. So there's a lot of things to consider right now. There's a lot of wheels spinning.
I don't go with the whole. I mean, Steve talks about this a lot. The CGI recreation. We've got to keep these characters. No, let's follow real world. Let's follow real life. Unfortunately, we lost Carrie, and it cut us to pieces. So there's nothing wrong with losing Leia. And one day Mark may not be around. Well, will not be around, and so it's okay to lose Luke. And one day Harrison Ford won't be around, so it's okay to lose Han, as we did already.
Yeah.
So I really hope we don't go down a path of, purely because of appeasing certain crowds. We can't lose his character. We've got to recreate them. No. Let's deal with what's actually happened, and let's pay tribute to them by, giving them a story that honours them in the way that they're quite happily, they've said goodbye to us in whatever fashion, and let's give them a story that honours them in that fashion as well. So
well said, mate. Can we just talk about Yoda? Because
yes.
he is one of the issues.
I thought Yoda was quite funny, actually.
It's one of the issues I had, and I'd had a message from Mark Airy earlier on. We're about to get to his voicemail in just a second, but he was saying, why did Yoda look so weird? And I think it's because we've gone back to a puppet. We've gone back to
a puppet. Yeah,
Frank Oz puppeteering.
I think it was actually a scan of a puppet, which was even weirder.
Right.
It was a digitized puppet.
Situation. It certainly had something on it, because it's, he
looked pursed all the time as well, didn't he? He looked like constantly pursing his lips. It was a very strange situation, and he looked a bit goblin-like for the first time.
Yes, and it
actually went back to an old Macquarie kind of image.
What I wasn't crazy about was the impish take on Yoda again. I expected, and this is the thing, it's what I expected, and then I didn't get. I expected the gravitas from Yoda. Especially and I have to shout out Rob, because Rob called out this ages ago, that Yoda would rock up and admonish Luke for failing to adhere to what he'd been told at the end of Return of the Jedi. Pass on what you learned. Now, Rob called that quite clearly, and he couldn't have been more right, because that's exactly what Yoda does. But there's this impish take on the character, like the giggling and the stamping of the feet and stuff, which I didn't take any of those elements from Yoda's character in the prequels. We saw it when it was a disguise in Empire Strikes Back, and then when we were losing Yoda in Return of the Jedi, there was the gravitas and the more serious note.
Right.
So I'm not sure how I feel about this version of Yoda, because it doesn't fit into any of the boxes I have for Yoda.
Right. That goes back to the familiarization of characterization that you require, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need that. The Yoda we saw in Empire Strikes Back was a little pain in the neck for the first 25 minutes. He was impish and so on. The Yoda we saw in Return of the Jedi was somewhat older. I know he'd been giving Luke a little bit of a hard time because he was testing him at the same time, but he was older, he was sick, and that's the reason we saw him in that gravitas state, for want of a better term.
Yeah.
And in the prequels, he was supposed to be this high-standing ambassador, so he's going to be setting said example.
Exactly.
So when I saw him last night, I was actually quite pleased to see the impish character come back that was giving Luke a hard time like he used to.
Yeah.
And I thought he was going to come out of a line, look, it's just in context, get over it sort of thing, but he actually went beyond that, and he's like, I'll tell you what, I'll sort the tree out. I loved it.
Yeah, that was the Yoda destroying the tree with the lightning. That was something as well that I thought, whoa, hang on a minute, that's dialing a Jedi up again, because if he's manipulating the weather now as well, it's kind of, I'll accept all that. That's fine. They're problems I can't get over, but I can get over. But the thing with the impish Yoda, it seemed to imply that there was a connection, and maybe there is, there'd been a connection between Yoda and Luke ongoing, and he was treating Luke more like a peer at this point. So he felt free to have that sort of playful attitude rather than be all business, because...
Yeah, I think he treated him like a boy student, didn't he? I mean, I can't teach him. The boy has no patience.
Yeah.
He will learn patience and that kind of thing. And I think he enjoyed patronising him.
Yeah, and he does a bit of that this time, doesn't he? When he refers to Luke
time.
as young Skywalker. But I think these characters have been out of touch for a while because of Luke's having cut himself off from the Force. So I think this is the first time they've interacted for a number of years at least.
Yeah, so the other thing, though, that does actually go along and support people's concern on the impish character was the fact Luke was resentful of it as well.
Yeah.
Luke was not impressed with Yoda's actions in that scene.
No, see, Luke was in the Rey position and Yoda was in the Luke position back in Empire Strikes Back. And now we're seeing Rey turn up all business and seriousness, and Luke doing that thing where he takes the lightsaber and just tosses it over his shoulder, absentmindedly.
Sorry, but I thought I didn't laugh out loud, but I thought that was cool.
I laughed at it, and it didn't worry me at all, because I thought he's going to light that up now, and there's going to be some sort of cool stance. And then
Well, I always said to you he was going to just give it back to her and say, I have no use for this.
Yeah, and it wasn't far off that, was it? It was the next, and then the Porgs. One Porg staring straight down the lightsaber, and the other Porg touching the little.
Was cool.
I thought there's something horrible was going to happen.
He's tapping on the trigger.
That was a really well judged moment. And
quick tangent: the Porgs, they weren't overdone. It was cool.
Yeah, they didn't really amount to much.
I got a bit of a kick out of the ones that were building a nest in the Falcon. That was quite funny.
Yeah, I like the little twist of Chewbacca having cooked a couple of them, and then all the Porgs looking on as if to say, "What have you done?"
That was Johnny.
Yeah, I really like that. That was a cool moment. We've already spoken about the Luke and Leia of it all, but the repeating of themes. Dave said, they kept hitting on themes. I did notice some of that. There was a lot of hope. You have to rekindle hope. Oh, now the galaxy has lost hope, and it's kind of like, oh, yeah, all right, we get it. Hope's important. Did that bug you at all?
Not at all.
No.
That's what the story's about.
Yeah, there is some of these things I think are going to be very subjective, and what makes people bristle is going to be.
It's interesting. I'm probably going on a very wide tangent. You may well disagree with me, but there's an interesting pickup on some of the repetition concerns, where nobody had concerns with repetition of an entire backstory when they watched TFA, and they all loved it.
Yeah.
And that was pure repetition.
I think it's because it was safe. If you repeat, if you
got to throw that away.
If you repeat something and it's safe, that's all right. If you repeat something and you're asking people to if you
repeat something, you are safe, aren't you? Surely.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're asking people to take a chance and follow, like Ryan saying, "Come and follow me down this route, and we're going to add all this other stuff in." All right, we'll do that, but I'm not going to do both at the same time. That's not. I'm just hypothesizing there that might be people's positions. That's why people struggle with it, is they're being asked to do too much as an audience. But I have been asking for this for a long time, and I'm grateful that he's done that. I'm grateful that he's had the faith in me as an audience member to keep up. It's like, I was thinking about this earlier. I was working on an analogy, and I thought, well, the Force Awakens was kind of like JJ greeting us with this warm hug and saying, "Come on, let me tell you this Star Wars story," and then slowly walking off with us, and we get this Star Wars story, and then he says, "And the end." And then Ryan comes running past and grabs your wrist and says, "Keep up," and goes off at a sprint, and we're having to run along behind him as he's screaming this story into your ears.
Isn't it awesome?
That's a great thing. That is a great thing, because JJ did his job. He brought us back into this world quietly and comfortably and said, "Look, these are the things you've got to get used to." And then Ryan said, "Right, belt yourself in, because this thing has got a kick to it."
Now, Ryan did his job.
Oh, absolutely. They both did. They did exactly what they needed to do.
We'll disagree on the latter comment, but there you go.
Well, yeah, you can be as wrong as you like. Right, let's go to another. Let's go to another voicemail. This is from Mark Airy, from our other podcast, the Toy Box Daily. So this is Mark's comments on Last Jedi.
Hi guys, this is the other Mark, the Toy Box Mark, and I've just been to see The Last Jedi, and all I can think at the moment is, wow. From start to the end, it's just totally unexpected. If you were expecting any of this, you're a better man than me. From the beginning, where Luke just throws the lightsaber away, I think it was just Mark Hamill. I don't think it was Luke Skywalker. I felt it was Mark Hamill and not Luke Skywalker at all. It was just in character as himself. And the only time I think Luke Skywalker came out when Atto was there. And I wish we'd have seen a bit more of that. Now, the things that I found unexpected were the Snoke scene. I won't go too spoilery in it, although there are a lot of spoilers in this. The Snoke scene, I was just thinking, where do we go from here? And obviously it's Kylo, Supreme Leader Kylo, and he's turned totally dark. And And that's just one of the unexpected moments from it. Just everything. The only thing I didn't like was the Leia bit where she used the Force to levitate back to the ship. I just thought that was a bit Walt Disney-ish, should I say. The other thing was, how did Rey get back to the Millennium Falcon? That from the Star Destroyer. I do believe that it was a mistake in killing Holdo off. She would have made a good leader for the rebels as they are now. But having Leia destroy that Star Destroyer, that might have made more sense if, in a bit of hindsight, available on good bookshops. So that's my little review. I need to watch it again, to be honest with you. So I think we all do. I think we all need to see it at least once, twice, 3 times. How many times we see it? And I think I'll go again at the weekend. So I will give you a better review then. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Mark. That was awesome. So he's touched on a few things there that are common to a lot of the feedback we've been getting, and we're going to get into something on one of his points in a moment, because Mark S. has also sent us in a question relating to The Last Jedi. But Mark thought the Snoke thing was unexpected, which I think we've all agreed that
it was totally unexpected.
It's kind of a wonderful twist that does leave us, all adrift. Where do we go from here? I personally thought we'd got a villain locked in for the trilogy, but now obviously all bets are off. We do. Indeed, yeah. We were just looking at the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. The comments, the biggest problem he had, I think, was Leia, the space pop-ins moment in the destruction of was it the Radis? Yeah, the Radis.
Yeah.
Leia pulling herself back from the brink of death in open space. So we've covered those bits, so maybe we won't go into those right now. And also, of course, Mark's point about Holdo should have been Leia, give Carrie and Leia a way out of the franchise. We've spoken about that. I'm sure if it was ever considered, it was deemed not possible, although I think it would have been a wonderful way to wrap up that character's arc. It's a no-go. But let's get to a couple of Mark's comments here. So he said he felt that some of that stuff, certainly with Luke tossing the lightsaber, which we've just been speaking about, he felt there was more Mark in that mix than there should have been. How did you assess Mark's portrayal of Luke?
No, I mean, I think Mark Hamill did what he was required to do, because, I mean, it was obvious from previous press releases and interviews and so on that he was surprised by the character that was written and delivered by Ryan. So I don't think it was Mark. I think it was Ryan telling Mark to be Luke in this fashion, simple as. I don't think it was Mark at all. No,
that's a fair comment. There are a lot of people, I've heard many commentators now talking about this film and saying how the only time they really felt like they were watching Luke was when he was interacting with Chewie or R2. And some of that, some of the nuances that came through, called right back to the OT.
It was made very clear to us that was not coming.
No, and that's all fair. We knew we were getting something new with the character of Luke, a character shaped by time and circumstance, of course. And I do think, in some ways, when he was having an exchange with Yoda, I think that I got a call back to some of the...
Yeah, a little bit, because Yoda was being his impish, not his impish self, but he was being impish Yoda and almost taunting Luke from that perspective. He didn't care how old Luke was; he was still my young apprentice.
The relationship's exactly the same,
as far as Yoda was concerned. Yeah,
yeah, and it's nice that interplay, and certainly the interplay between Luke and R2 and Luke and Chewie, they do really land well. And in as much as Mark seems to be channeling his younger self in those moments. And it's more than just hearing Luke say those words. There does seem to be something in there that lights up inside that character when he sees Chewie, and then immediately afterwards when he registers what must have happened to Han. that light kind of goes out for a brief second.
We've got to remember that he's an old man now, and he's not going to be the character that we remember from ROT, from Jedi, sort of thing. I actually liked the fact that when R2 showed the projection, and we went all the way back to A New Hope, that he was this like, okay, you got me. But he was still a pissed off old man.
I love that so much. That might be my favourite moment of the entire film, and it's not just because it's Carrie. Of course, that's a major part of it, but I thought it was such a well-judged moment. We've got the lightsaber being handed to Luke. That should have been enough to trigger him back into hero mode, if you like. It should have been enough to propel him back into action. But seeing his sister the way she was then, having that callback right to the very beginning of this story when Luke was first drawn into or pulled onto the hero's journey, seeing that projection again was just such a wonderful moment. I think that might be my favourite, certainly at this point, my favourite moment of the movie.
I mean, that would have drilled him deep, deep, deep down.
It did to me. It touched that part of me where I thought, here we go. Now we're off. Luke's had a fire lit under him now. And immediately after he goes to Ray and says, all right, I'll train you. Let's get going at dawn. It's kind of that thing, that's the thing. He needed that fire in his belly. He needed to be reminded who he was, what his responsibilities are, and being encouraged to go and attack it head on. Be proactive about his position.
Almost not be scared of who he used to be. I think there's an element of that inside him as well.
Yeah, that was a nice colour to paint into Luke. I think that whole thing of Ray turns up. The Resistance needs Luke Skywalker. Leia needs Luke Skywalker. I need a master.
I need
a
legend
teacher.
that is Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, you don't need
the word legend.
And I love that where he said, "You don't need Luke Skywalker. What am I going to do? Turn up with a laser sword and face down the entire First Order?" Yes, and that's precisely what you do. So, thanks for the sowing of that seed. But yeah, he just really has learnt to distrust who he is, his motivations,
because he felt he made mistakes down the line.
He made mistakes, and this is the thing. This is the curse of the Skywalker bloodline. I think they're all cursed to make the same mistake over and over again. With Ben,
pretty much, yeah.
Ben making the mistakes that Anakin made. It's no different, but it is seeing that colour come through in Luke was really compelling for me, and I enjoyed it very much. I can see why people are celebrating Mark's performance the way they are right now, because it really is so delightfully nuanced, and it goes from the sublime to the ridiculous and back with some of the stuff he does whilst he's on Octo to what he does, some of the deeper moments that he gets to,
Yeah, I specifically loved obviously Mark's portrayal of Luke, but I also really, really loved what Luke had become. So as much as people were screaming that, was it Mark being Mark on the screen? And no, he was being Luke, but Luke's changed now, guys. Yeah, and we've got to go with him, and let's try and persuade who Luke is now, and not we don't want to retrieve the farm boy, everybody's hero. We've got to make this old guy come to our set of terms. That's what we're going to try and do.
And the thing is as well, he's not fitting into the archetype for the old Jedi we've seen previously. He's not the same Jedi that Alec Guinness portrayed. He's not the same Jedi that we met when we met Yoda. This is something completely new.
It threw a whole question on who the Jedi actually were, didn't it?
Yeah.
To be honest,
he did. He
question, made no bones of.
He did question them, didn't he? Questioned the integrity of that organisation.
He was very quick to shout their shortcomings,
which was great, really refreshing, because that's what we've all been seeing, right? That was the purpose of the prequels, to show
basically
how stagnant
they sucked.
they became when they were like these police monks.
They didn't actually do much.
Before we get into, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do Mark S's question now, because it does tie into one of Mark's observations about what happens now that Snoke's out of the picture, what happens with regards to the First Order and what have you. So Mark S has written, and he says, "We now know how The Last Jedi ends. We also know that Episode 9 was supposed to be Leia's movie. I think if Carrie was still alive, Leia would confront Kylo and bring him back to the light. it would have been interesting to see what would then have happened to the First Order. Maybe you can discuss what happens to the First Order if Kylo Ren becomes good. So where are we now, in your estimation, Paul, in terms of the First Order that we're going to meet when we go into Episode 9? How will it differ from what we've seen so far? And how do you see that evolving in the next movie?
He'll either... I think he'll make them implode because his ego and his attitude, his anger and his conflict, he won't know how to lead them, and he'll lead them wrong. And because of his power, I think obviously Hux and so on will still succumb to his wishes and things will implode internally. Or something else is going to come along, he's going to be replaced, which may offer... I think he's beyond redemption now, actually. I think he's beyond redemption, to be completely honest.
He's had a chance, hasn't he, at this point?
I think his chance is actually gone. I don't know how many you get, but I think he's beyond redemption, and I think he's basically... I mean, we're going to be seeing, obviously, another Rey Kylo face-off situation. I don't know what form it'll take, and I hope it's not just a lightsaber duel, because it could be more interesting if they do it some other way. But he's either going to perish in an implosion of, the First Order and a warring situation, because we're still waiting for the outer reaches of the galaxy to maybe, pick up Leia's message. The fact, they're talking about, I know they've all got hyperspace and so on, but you still can't arrange those things in an hour.
No, it's true.
So I'm wondering if something is coming. As much as the Falcons escaped, the next film I think might literally be 20 minutes after that escape, and there's going to be a second coming of and another enormous battle. Yeah. Which may well be his undoing.
You're right, because I've heard other people sort of saying no one came to their rescue, but it's not like you sit there waiting for a text and then you go quick to the Armada. It doesn't work like that.
Where are they? Other side of the galaxy. That could take 80 days, even by light speed.
But we have got characters out there that are associated with our group. You're looking at Lando. You're looking at Maz Kanata. There are people out there that could be called into service for the rebellion. And that may be a thing that we see delivered in Episode 9. But I think you're right. Kylo now at the helm of... Look at what he did at the end of this film.
It was awesome and pathetic at the same time.
Yeah, it's like, fire everything there and send all the TIE fighters after the Falcon. He didn't see how they were being played.
He has no nuance.
Luke was distracting Kylo Ren over here, and Rey was distracting the First Order over there. And between Hux and Kylo Ren, they're like kids driving their dad's cars.
Yeah, Hux is bad, actually.
They just don't know what they're doing. So I think what might happen is they might become less... deliberate, the First Order, and more just like this scattershot organisation that just acts out in petulant ways, and it will give the rebellion a chance to reform and rise up and tackle them on more of a level footing. And that's when Leia has had a chance, or whoever's going to be heading up, be Poe, be able to pull together some supporters from around the galaxy to form the new rebellion and go after these two kids now who are running this organisation who are ill-equipped to do so.
Technology aside, the rebels actually have the upper hand because there's no leadership in the First Order anymore.
No, and that might even be the problem. There might be some infighting in there when you've got we saw, I can't think, was it Kennedy, Admiral Kennedy, who had who was on the Dreadnought at the beginning. He's now dead, but characters of that age group, people that have legacied over perhaps from the Empire, the Remnant, and have become the First Order. You could get characters like that who will start to challenge people like Hux and Kylo. It
goes
from
against
inside.
Traditional hierarchies, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it might collapse in on itself even. So that could be where the First Order goes. While we're on the subject of Kylo Ren, can I ask you what your thoughts are of this connection between Kylo Ren and Rey?
That was one of my favourite parts of the whole film.
Was it?
Oh, big time. Every time all the background sound stopped and you're in almost silence in sheer she'd just stare, or he'd stare. I like the bit where she's up the ramp and he's actually looking up in the ceiling, kind of thing.
Beautifully made.
Those scenes were fantastic, and I seriously love the idea. I mean, we were talking about Luke and Ray having a joint vision of Knights of Ren and so on. I actually didn't even care that Knights of Ren didn't appear, and that's how the hut exploded. But I love the idea these two were just sort of touching across zones, and it was actually Luke that was like, enough, kind of thing, and that's what blew the hut to pieces. But those two constantly reaching across almost like, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like force zones, for want of a better. The force was bridging, wasn't it? I could have watched a movie on that. I'm not kidding.
It was a great. I mean,
and their dialogue was really cool too.
It was cool. It was a really interesting concept that they could connect like that remotely, and it was really beautifully executed as well. With, like you said, the eye lines, the way they planned the shots, so the eye lines matched, even though the environments were completely different, and they made a connection. I didn't quite understand why Rey went straight to Ben, because it was so close to her confronting him on Starkiller, having seen him kill Han, why she felt so much sympathy for him. Maybe that just goes to illustrate how light side she really is, because she's just like this beautiful empathic character.
She's pure empathy, mate.
Yeah. But the connection was really interesting. It flirted a little bit too much with the Reylo of it all, and I thought, please don't cave in to public demand and just have these two characters locked into a romance. And we did hear... I think it was Ryan that said there is a romance central to this thing, but it's unlike anything you've seen before. And that's what I think this was. I think this connection between Ben / Kylo Ren and Rey was very much about two kindred spirits, for want of a better way, meeting across an expanse and trying to find some common ground, coming at it with different agendas. He certainly felt he was coming at it with the Sith agenda almost. Like, I'll recruit her and then we can do evil things together. And she was thinking, I'm going to pull this guy out of hell. And that, I think, was this wonderful juxtaposition of two characters meeting, thinking they're coming to the same conversation, but really them being at odds. Every time they're not talking about the same thing at any given moment, and they do ally themselves when they face off against the Praetorian Guard. They do align with each other.
Survival required it.
But they were both completely misjudging the situation. I did worry that we were going to go too far towards the Reylo of it all, but I did think the way it played out was wonderful. I thought it was really, it was just really fantastic to see how suddenly, when he put her in a position where she had to make a decision, she said, right, I'm off. And that answers the question that we've been asked previously by Mark Airy. How did she get back to the Falcon? Well, she took Snoke's escape ship, and she obviously had a rendezvous point with
she stole
with
the ship.
Chewie. Yeah, she stole Snoke's ship, didn't she? So, yeah, the Reylo of it all worried me, but ultimately I think the connection between those two characters was fantastic. And one last point I think we'd be remiss if we didn't address about the Rey and Kylo Ren of it all was the reveal of her parentage.
How'd you feel about that?
Well, I saw it. I kind of been calling it for a while that she used nothing because he is the Skywalker. So she doesn't then need to be the Skywalker because we've already got one. So she didn't need to be that. There's plenty of rumours about, she could have been, I'd theorised that she could have been a product of the Force, the way we presume Anakin was. She might have been a chosen one, a prophesied one. But we come back a number of times to the fact that she doesn't necessarily have to be anybody. She could literally just be a nobody, because that's where this all started, essentially, isn't it? That you find this nobody just pops up from obscurity, and the Jedi Council say, no, there's nothing special about this person, but it's what's at the heart of that person that matters. And yeah, so it did feel also, when I had my cynical pants on, it did feel a little bit like Ryan was saying, I'm so sick and tired of this debate. Let's just get an answer out there now and shut it down. She's nothing.
It was superbly done, actually.
Beautifully done.
Plus, as cold as it was, Adam Driver / Kylo's delivery of the line was absolutely amazing. It was just like, you're nothing. Don't worry. just money sold for people that wanted drink, that kind of thing. You're just an orphan kid. And then if you rewind this back into the vision of this little girl being grabbed by the hand, you're like, oh my God, of course it is. These people they gave her to this guy to become a slave, thinking
it clicks together beautifully, doesn't it?
Exactly what you are. Unfortunately, you're everything, darling, but they were nothing. And, deal with it.
That to me as well is in a movie populated by incredible. I mean, we've listed them already. There's Mark. Carrie does a fantastic job. Oscar Isaac does an incredible job. Daisy, I just fall in love with her every second she's on screen. In a movie populated by these people at the very top of their game, Adam Driver is the MVP. He has to be. What he manages to do, and he shifts gears so effortlessly between being that petulant, spoilt brat, that emo, that troubled soul that we met in the previous movie, to being able to deliver something like that whole thing with Ray's parents, like, you say it, who are they? And she's tears rolling down her face.
Literally, it's just a set of words.
It's just words, but then what I love about the delivery, and I know this comes from Ryan because it fell out of his pen, but the way Adam delivers the line of "You're nothing, but not to me."
Yes, I picked up on that.
You have value to me, and it was said sensitively and compassionately, which was a surprise. To a degree,
he's still using her for his own resource. So
in a way, but he doesn't. He could goad her and push her, and it just seemed to me to be something genuine. It just seemed to be that was probably more Ben than Kylo speaking at that point. You're nothing, but I don't think of you like that. To me, you're everything. He's just dispatched Snoke to save her, to save him having to take that action.
Well, they were drawing parallels in the initial conversations, weren't they? When they were connecting, it was like, I know you feel alone all the time. I feel alone all the time, etc. Yeah. So he was, not in a romantic sense, but he was bonding with her.
Yeah.
And this is the first time someone actually knows and can empathise with who the hell I am and what the hell I'm going through. But Adam Driver still, he didn't turn out how I thought he might turn out during the movie, and I'm so pleased I was wrong, frankly, because he's still the most interesting character by far.
Yeah. No, it's a fantastic. What he does with the character is incredible, and what Ryan's done with those two characters in setting them alongside each other so that their paths are almost identical. They both left a place to go and stand beside somebody who then failed them, disappointed them. Kylo never saw...
Yeah, it's a very cool parallel, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really cool parallel. He never saw Snoke as being the person that could give him what he wants, and Rey certainly struggling to get what she needs from Luke. So some of that stuff was really, really pretty cool. Right, let's get into... We've got one more voicemail, and then we can wrap up. So
this is from Adam Driver.
This is from our man Adam Sheldon.
Hi, this is Adam. This movie enthralled me, excited me, it captivated me, it gave me what I wanted, it gave me what I'd hoped for and wished for. I was completely and utterly lost for words afterwards, stunned, amazed, and I absolutely adored it. There were some scenes that I know I was told about that would possibly happen, and I was still blown away by what I saw. There was nothing actually, if I can remember, that I disliked at all. It will take me some time before I can position this film in a list, but at the moment it's extremely high, and it's just going to get better and better for me. And it brought tears. There was a moment when you think you're going to lose a particular member of the cast and you don't, and you just feel the hairs on your arms go up. There are moments when you see a character that you didn't expect to see and they're there and you are happy. And the very final scene, I thought, what's going on here? And it left me with this feeling of absolute bliss, pleasure, and hope. And if we're going to get a trilogy from Rian Johnson, then I think what we were left with is perhaps somebody or someone or something that will be carrying forward into that. I can't recommend this film enough, and love it. Absolutely love it.
That's Adam there. I think you'd have to go a long way to disappoint Adam, because he has Star Wars in his very soul. This man, he's an absolute fan in the purest sense of the word. So I thought it might be interesting for us to wrap up on a more positive note. So what do you take from Adam's comments there, mate?
Here.
Yeah.
No, I know where he's coming from. I mean, I've had my Star Wars ups and downs and so on and so forth, and I've been vocal about them as much as is necessary. Sort of thing. I try and take things on. I try to understand, why people do what they do, but from the point of view of delivery of a story and what you think you want from an old set of stories that we're used to, I'm just really, really pleased that somebody decided to take this by the scruff of the neck, pull it into a whole new ideal, take a few risks, and still deliver what we love about Star Wars. And I think Ryan's knocked it out of the park, frankly.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you at this point. I think he's done so much of what we've wanted and what we've spoken about in the past 2 years about challenging us as fans, taking Star Wars in a new direction, expanding on it, making the world feel bigger, giving the characters more complex motivations than they seem to have had before. And he's delivering on all of that stuff. So ultimately, I think my experience of this is positive, and I wish it could have been more pure leaving the theatre. And I'm sure the majority of people I've spoken to, certainly from our little group, our little community, are feeling quite challenged by it and feeling fairly disappointed by it. I think if I could offer them any solace or any advice, it would be that feeling does go away, and you can get back to the way, Paul, you've spoken quite passionately about it, and Adam, we've just heard Adam speak really eloquently about how he feels about this film. You will get to that point, I'm sure, on repeat viewings, because the stuff that trips you up and takes the wind out of your sails, that goes away, and you don't notice it on the next go around. You notice the other stuff at play, and it becomes an easier experience. It's just that first time trying it. It's just a little bit of a, whoa, hang on a minute, I wasn't quite prepared to navigate these waters. It will get better with repeat viewings.
Doesn't need them.
Way to undermine my entire point there, Paul.
Sorry.
From a totally personal perspective. What do you want to? Let's wrap things up for this part of the conversation.
This spoiler-free session. Yeah.
Well, next week we're going to be able to discuss this we'll let Rob and Steve have centre stage next week, and they can give us their reaction to the movie and their thoughts on it.
A bit of a yin-yang situation.
Yeah, I think we'll get something from the guys.
I have no idea what Steve will make of it. He'll enjoy Ryan going left field.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he'll enjoy what he does with it, he'll just say, I'm glad it was risky and I'm glad he went over a different path, but whether he actually enjoys it based on the content still is another situation.
Yeah.
Rob is a bit more old school and he's a bit more in your farm than I think, so I think Rob's going to have a few negatives coming back as well, which is absolutely fine. So,
yeah, I kind of seen, I got an idea from some of the Twitter conversations I've seen in the private chats on the Commonwealth. I think Rob might have been a little bit more into this than I give him credit for. Because
cool.
I think I'm getting the impression he shares more of your perspective on this than mine, coming straight out of the gate. But it's Steve. He's the unknown quantity. I think we might have to do something to mine a little bit out of Steve ahead of next week's episode. I'll have a suggestion. We'll get to that in a second. But in terms of wrapping up your thoughts on this film, Paul, let's give people something to take away from this episode. Your final thoughts on Last Jedi?
I don't know how to put a cherry on a cake from what I've already said. It's about time. Everything I've been waiting for a long time, really. I mean, a long time. I know you can't compare the prequels compared to what I saw last night. They were many years ago as well. But this is what I wanted to be made after the 25-year gap after Return of the Jedi. This is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
That's it.
Nicely done. I think for me, it's a movie that will improve with viewings. It's not, I think, Rogue One last year and Force Awakens the year before jumped straight in to very high positions on my stack rank of Star Wars movies. And every time I've revisited them, I've got a little bit more out of it, emotionally and in terms of my understanding of Star Wars. They've worked consistently for me. This, I think, is coming quite low for me. But I do think already after having a repeat viewing, it's felt a little bit better. I feel a little bit more comfortable with it. So I think it's going to improve for me over time. And from what I'm hearing, that's the way people took Empire back in 1980. So that's not a bad platform to start from, that you leave thinking, oh no, this doesn't feel right. And then suddenly it becomes, oh, this might be the greatest sequel of all time. Let's see how it matures. As far as my appreciation of it goes, I think it will go from strength to strength. Well, let's wrap this episode up because I think, Paul, we might have an opportunity to do something afterwards for 5 minutes that was unexpected. That's a teaser. Although if you're a VIP, I suspect you already know what I'm talking about. Right, I'm going to wrap up now, Paul, with just a little bit of an outro. So where can people find you between episodes?
You will find me at moviescorenews.com. You'll find me at Facebook at Moviescore News. You'll also find me on Twitter at Moviescore News. You'll also find me in Facebook at Hindsight the Novel and on Twitter with Hindsight the Novel. And everybody, please go and buy Hindsight the Novel.
Indeed, well said. You can find everything I do at talkstarwars.co.uk and I'm on Twitter at talkstarwars. You can find Steve at Stephen_Ware on Twitter, or if you search Wild About Nature on Twitter and YouTube, you will also find him there. He puts out spectacular work on his YouTube channel. And you'll find everything Rob does at emotionally14.com, and Rob is at Rob Wade Vision on Twitter. Both those gents will join us next week to give us their thoughts on what will be our 100th episode of this podcast. Very excited by that. So if you want to contribute anything to the show, a question or a comment, then feel free to hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, or email us directly at talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. If you attach an MP3, we'll use it as a voicemail. I'd also recommend heading over to StarWarsCommonwealth.com to check out our partner shows, Tumbling Saber, Generation X-Wing, Rogue Squadron Podcast, the Skyhoppers Podcast, the Nerd Room, and San Diego Sabres. All of those guys are putting out top quality work, and right now it's fever pitch for The Last Jedi. So head over there and check them out. Download our show notes. There's a whole bunch of links in there for services you can acquire through us. There's shop t-shirts in our store and things like that. And there's links to everybody we've mentioned in there also. All right, we'll see you next week for episode 100 of Talk Star Wars.
Yay! Go
and watch The Last Jedi multiple times and share all your thoughts and feelings with us. We'll see you all next week.
Take care, guys.
Talk Star Wars is a proud member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Find us at StarWarsCommonwealth.com alongside
The Tumbling Saber Podcast,
the Generation X-Wing Podcast,
Rogue Squadron Podcast,
the TSW Roundtable,
the Skyhoppers Podcast,
the Nerd Room Podcast,
and San Diego Sabres Radio Podcast.
Head to StarWarsCommonwealth.com. Take your first steps to a larger world.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.